Well, hello, good listener. Welcome to a good bonus that is extra spooky. If you haven't done so yet, you should check out our Ghosts Gone Good episode that is now up. It's the perfect way to keep the Halloween scary times going. Sometimes when we record our episodes, we record way more than we can use for the episodes themselves. And today would be an example of that. Our friend Mary Edwards returned to tell us a really good ghost story in the episode that's already up, and we continued our conversation. Wasn't enough room for it in the episode, but I thought you'd like to hear it here and now. So here we go. The conversation continues right now with our friend Mary Edwards. So my friend Mary is back. This is actually your third time here.
Yeah, my third go round.
Yeah, we're hurtling toward our 200th episode. So I'm thrilled when formers come back and revisit. You sent me this gorgeous story this morning, which I listened to while I was on the spin bike, spinning away at the gym. And I wanted
to make you spin faster because it was scary.
Not really. I found it more charming than scary. But this is what I wanted to ask you. When you were a kid, was it scary or was it kind of cool to have guests?
Well, I thought they were my imaginary friends. So I was really in this neutral space as a child would be. And children tend to be open. And this is why spirits can come to children, because we're just like very carefree, doing our thing. And they were obviously in search of other playmates because they were otherwise institutionalized kids who passed on and came back as these wanton, playful young spirits who insisted on meeting me a few times a week in my basement for, an hour or two of playtime. And then they would just go right back into the wall and disappear.
Did you name them or did they tell you their names?
They did. So what I can recall was there were about, it seemed like there were more than 6, but I think I have about 5 names in my recollection. So my main ally, and again, I thought these were just imaginary friends, but it was confirmed by my mother, and wildly shortly before her passing, that she believed that they were spirits just because of the nature of, the proximity to the institution, the manner in which they came. She went to go consult someone. So I thought that they were all just imaginary friends, but it seemed like, well, where else would I generate these names from? They were not usual names. They weren't later or mid 20th century names. They were like early 20th century names, like Gunner. My main ally was Ducket. Then there were these twins, Nantha and Samantha. Who else was there? I think there was a Lucy in there somewhere. And who else was present? So anyway, it was just like a handful of kids, all dressed in clothes that were similar to the clothes that our play clothes that we'd wear after school, but some of the clothes looked a little dated. So again, I didn't pay it any mind. I didn't think twice about it. I just said, oh, these are my imaginary friends. I didn't think that they were ghosts, and that's probably why I wasn't scared. And that was why my parents never wanted to say anything, because they caught on early, and when they confirmed their thoughts with the specialist advised them not to let on. Otherwise, I might get scared and it just might sort of ruin my childhood.
Right. Did you, as an adult, did you ever look into more information on this place to search for them?
I didn't. I've been advised to do that several times, and I just never really got around to it. But I should get on some kind of online registry and look for if there were names that they can trace back to when Willowbrook State School was in existence. Now, the interesting thing about Willowbrook State School is I believe it opened in the 1930s. And it started out as this place that parents would send their children, or family members would send other family members to when they couldn't care for them. This is at a time where nobody really knew what autism was. We were using terms like mental retardation instead of, being on the spectrum or uh, special needs. This is at a time where if you were born with one leg shorter than the other, they put you with everybody else. If you were blind and you didn't have assistance, they sent you there. If you were, um, if you had a forked tongue or like a cleft palate, they sent you there. So it, anybody who was just differently abled was sent to Willowbrook State School because they couldn't be cared for at home, or the families just didn't have an understanding of how to care for their loved ones. And here's a little factoid. Are you a Carole King fan?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know that song, Brother, Brother?
Yeah.
I thought that song was about racial equality when I was growing
Right.
up.
I was about to say, like, reach out and
brother,
touch
brother,
everyone's
brother.
hand. Uh-huh. Yes.
Exactly. It came out of the time where a lot of those songs were about unity. I found out through Sheila Weller's book, Girls Like Us, that the song was about her brother who her parents could not care for, and they sent him to Willowbrook State School, and every Sunday they pack a picnic lunch and they drive from Brooklyn to Staten Island. Well, I'm trying to figure out, they had to go through New Jersey because at that time there was no Verrazano Bridge. So they drive through New Jersey, I guess from Brooklyn, and then they'd come into Staten Island and spend a few hours with their son, her brother. And I don't know, I can't imagine that he's still with us. I'm not sure if he's still alive. Carole King herself is 82 years old. But that's what the song was about. And so there's this connection with Carole King and Willowbrook, and who knows, maybe one of those people who came through the wall,
Wow. Well, because you're so musically inclined, I can see that happening.
Right? Or like all these coincidences.
Right. Well, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
As an adult, do you remember back to the last time you saw or spent time with your imaginary friends?
I think I was about 9 years old. It seemed that once I was sort of at that prepubescent stage and distracted by other things and kind of, switching gears socially. I was going into intermediate school after that, and um, I had other preoccupations. I thought about them, but I didn't have any recollection after that of seeing them. And years later, it didn't dawn on me right away, but it hit me when I guess about a little over 20 years ago, there was a movie with Robert Downey Jr. where he played a young man who was, when he was born, these spirits came to him and they became his childhood friends, and they were fun and impish. Alfred Woodard was one of the characters, and they were impish and they were fun, but they would get him into trouble. And when he said, "Oh, but these are my friends, these are my imaginary friends," to his parents, who were getting distressed over the mayhem that was ensuing, and it was mild mayhem, but it was childish stuff that adults just can't tolerate after a while. They basically got sent away, and then they came back to him later in life, and it had me thinking about, oh, I wonder if they'd ever show up again sometime in my life. That would be really interesting if I could be receptive to having them show up again and having that dialogue, because I have had other encounters with spirits, but not this particular grouping. So yeah, I would say from 9 years old on, I hadn't seen them again, but I'd be curious to know if that energy's around somewhere.
When you think back to this time and seeing them as imaginary friends, did you hear their voices? Did you, were they there for long periods of time, or was it more glimpsy things? I was just talking to somebody about this earlier, James, who's also on the show. and we were talking about, like sometimes like a split image of seeing something across a room, a figure that for a split second, but the brain processes it much like a car accident. Car accident happens in a split second, right? But we play it out and it goes in slow motion and it seems like it lasts for hours or 20 minutes or it's much longer. It's much more vivid.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the case for you, or was it in real time? Or do you even remember?
I felt like it was in real time. It just seemed to be this ritualistic thing that I would see them a number of times a week in a number of times per week in the same place, which was my basement. I would just go down and I would know to instinctively go down to our basement, which was the wood paneled 1970s basement, and sort of wait for them, and then they would all come filing through the wall, and I would see them fully formed. And I don't recall, interestingly enough, I just don't recall dialogue. It was as if we knew how to play together without, that was our form of communication, was playing together. And it was more, I do recall facial expressions. I do recall particular facial expressions, and what was running parallel to what I thought were my imaginary friends versus at that time my real life friends or my friends in the flesh, were that they were about the same age. So I would see them from the time I was in preschool up until about 9. But at some point, when I stopped seeing them and I got older, and then it dawned on me that I said, oh, wow, maybe those were spirits that I saw. Like it was a fleeting thought from time to time whenever it came up in my adult life. And I wondered that if they ever came back to me, would they come back as children? As they were sort of arrested in that childlike stage? Or would they come back as an adult? And so many thoughts ran through my head around, the possibilities. What happens in that outer realm? Do people grow? Do they develop? Do they stay the same? They probably stay the same, as they would be remembered when they, maybe passed on.
It's so exciting. It's so.
It is. It's so freakish.
It's like a blessing. It's definitely freakish, but it's a blessing if you're open to it.
Absolutely. Like I said, I've had other encounters. I'll see if I can give you the Reader's Digest of this one. One of the wildest, because I've had a couple of real scary ones that just, unnerved me because of the timing of, in which spirits actually came to communicate with me. I'm like, I'm not the person you need to be talking to, and not in the middle of the night because I'm trying to sleep. So, there's that. But then there was one where I was at this art opening some years ago, and I met a gentleman who was a colleague of a friend of mine, and we just completely hit it off. He was also into film scores and was very, widely knowledgeable. I think he actually taught film, and he kept referring to, the fact that he and his wife had just moved to town, and he started this university job, and we were chatting about all kinds of things, and he kept saying, well, my wife, and I, we live right up the street from this place. And, I might take a break and come back to the reception. And, like, he was just gesturing. He kept gesturing toward the door. And at one point during the reception, I saw this beautiful woman. She looked like she was about 37 years old, shoulder length dark hair, this white jacket, fur lined collar, and beautiful smile. And he gestured over to her. She smiled, and I said, oh, that must be his wife. So I looked at her, and she waved. I waved back. And then she walked out the door, and I thought he was going to follow suit. And then about an hour later, when I saw him again, he was alone. And there was a performance during this reception. I'm sorry, there was a performance during this art opening. And that was the second part. And he was sitting on this 2-seater, and there was a single chair next to him. And the seat next to him was empty. And it was as if he was acknowledging, oh, come sit next to me. And I wanted to, but there was all this energy next to him. I just couldn't sit there. I felt like I can't sit there. I'm going to be sitting on somebody's lap. So I sat at the chair next to him, the freestanding chair. And the night went on, and when everything ended, we said our goodbyes, and I said, "It was so nice to meet you." And I was thinking to myself, it would have been nice to meet his wife. I'm sorry I never got a chance to meet her. And I don't recall saying that to him, but as I was leaving with friends, I expressed to them, I said, "Oh, your colleague, Paul, was so nice. We were talking throughout the whole thing, and I'm just so sorry I didn't get a chance to meet his wife. She walked out the door, and I'm assuming that was her." And my friend said, "What did you just say?" And I said, "Paul's wife. The one, was that his wife? The one with the white jacket and the fur-lined collar and the brown hair, and she's beautiful, beautiful smile." She's like, "You just described Paul's wife, but she's dead."
Nice.
And I'm like, "What?" Excuse me? Excuse me? She said, "Yeah, she died of cancer 3 months ago." I'm like, "Oh my God," because he didn't say a word about her passing. He kept referring to her as if she was still here.
Yeah.
And the woman I was looking at, as plain as day, was looking right at us and waving. And I looked around to see, look, is she waving to me? And there's nobody behind me. So, yeah, I think things like that can just really blow one's mind.
Wednesday, don't miss part 2 of our spooky times, our Ghost Gone Good times, as James Freitas continues his story, which started in the last episode. And he's going to keep us going, and we're going to really see if we can keep Halloween alive for a little bit longer. Until then, be good.